Hello and welcome to another episode of The Life of an Entrepreneur. Matt DeCoursey here with Herb Sih. Hello, Herb.
Hi, Matt.
Herb is the managing partner of Think Big Partners, a local co-working space and business accelerator. You want to give us a brief summary on that?
Sure, that's pretty good. We've evolved over the years. We started in 2009. We started out originally as an emerging technology business incubator. Ran a couple accelerator programs. We also realized that people started wanting to work with us, so it became a co-working space. And over the course of the last 8 years, we've really evolved into a innovation partner for Fortune 100 companies. We act as a partner with entrepreneurs, helping to commercialize technology, build companies, and really put companies, large companies and entrepreneurs together. If you do that right, cities create jobs, and we've gotten to smart cities too. But really, it's a combination of how do you help an entrepreneur with a good idea create a valuable company, and begins and ends with that. So really, that's where our economic development and entrepreneur help hat comes in, and we're a big hybrid. I don't even know what we do most days, but I know we do that. How's that for an answer?
It sounds a lot like my day on a lot of days. What do you do? I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do when I grow up, and that's true. So how can a co-working space help an entrepreneur?
The most valuable conversation most people have here every day is one they were least expecting to have. And if you're really busy, and especially if you're doing something that's hard, you usually don't have the time to be able to go out to all these networking events and meetings. And frankly, a lot of times you're going there, you're too busy to go. But really the conversation that matters are the ones that sound like, hey Matt, what are you working on? I'm working on this. I can help you with that. I'm a graphic designer, and that stuff is really kind of horrible. Or you're working on that. I spent 15 years in that industry, and that's not how it works. Or, that's exactly how it works. Or, I know a guy, or I know of an opportunity, or I know whatever it is. But really, a co-working space is about creating community. Entrepreneurship is lonely. It's hard. It's challenging. You learn from your mentors. We're very peer-driven. A lot of people in here are building things. There's a lot of freelancers that are also helping the companies that are being built out of here. But really, it's a conversation that you're least expecting to have that really accelerates people. We've got testimonial after testimonial. We came in here and we left 1,700% up in revenue in 1 year. It's not because we're nice people. I think we are. But it's because you're surrounded by a community that cares about you, who gives you what you need. You don't even know what you need. You find it here.
Okay, so accidental networking.
We call them collisions.
Collisions.
Yeah.
That's accidental networking.
Yeah.
Maybe we should upgrade the term collision for car companies to accidental networking. It'll sound more productive and less destructive.
Nice running into you.
So as I realize I'm fading in and out of the camera view here,
come on over.
Thanks, Herb. So as you can see, these are very scripted. And
you had me memorize the script before you turned on the camera.
I did, but that's
supposed to say that?
You're only the good things.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Most of the good things that anybody's ever heard about me, I've either paid other people to say or they were just wrong. So, all right, so being an entrepreneur is a lonely journey and a uphill battle on a lot of days. What are some of the things that you could tell a hopeful entrepreneur or startup founder to expect when it came to the road that is likely ahead of them?
Sure. Well, entrepreneurship is not a lottery ticket. You can't show up on a Monday, think you're going to design an idea, build it, stand it up on a Friday, and by next Monday you're going to have won the lottery. It's hard. It takes time. It's probably one of the hardest things you've ever done if you're really going to be in it. Why? Because you fall in love with an idea, but that idea isn't the thing you should fall in love with. It's the outcome. And being able to understand all the things that it takes, being able to put an idea front and center to the world is difficult. People are not always going to understand it. Maybe you don't understand it, but it always takes at least twice as much time or twice as much money or both, and that's if you're lucky, in my opinion. It takes more grit and determination than a lot of people really want to admit. I have never, ever, ever in my entire career ever been involved in a venture where somebody says, gosh, that went way better than expected. It took half as much money and we got it done way earlier. It just hasn't happened. And so it's hard, and you should be prepared for that, but it also can be very rewarding.
So with that, now, Herb just said some things that if you didn't write them down, you might want to. But I think one of the misperceptions that a lot of startup founders have, and this is going to play right into something that you've said to me a few years ago that I find myself repeating a lot. But with that, I think as startup founders or small companies, we sometimes believe that we can't compete with bigger entities. I've learned that can be the opposite, but you said to me, 9 women cannot make a baby in a month. And
I think that's still true as of this morning.
it is. They're working on a solution for that, but with that, I think that plays in well to a lot of startups and nimble teams. Meaning, you have a process that you have to work through, and you have to work out scenarios and testing and all these different things. So, what are some of the things that entrepreneurs and startup founders should be focused on in the early stages of their venture to try to still be competitive with large teams, but at the same time, in a focused way, produce a product that's able to generate revenue?
Sure. Well, I think the opportunity that entrepreneurs have, or early stage companies and small companies, is your weakness is also your strength.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to be agile, which means you're flexible, can be a great key differentiator. You can be speedy. You can arrive at a decision, make a change, and find out, by the next day or a week later if that change was right. The agility, the creativity, the ability to be able to be responsive to the market, listening to your customer, implementing changes. Doesn't mean that every customer is going to have the absolute answer, but being able to synthesize a composite of all the different reactions, feedback loops, and being able to put that into a plan and test those theses is really valuable. Large companies can't do that. In fact, if you look at entrepreneurs, the role that they can play with large companies, they can be a really good, nimble R&D team for these large companies. Because what do large companies have? They've got distribution channels, they have trusted networks, they often have capital. And for them to be able to really grow and succeed in the next years to come, they need to acquire new people or new ideas. But it's very hard for a lot of these companies, especially publicly traded. They cannot make a capital investment in a small private company. The compliance and the Sarbanes-Oxley restrictions alone is cost prohibitive. But if they can invest time or talent and look at what the entrepreneurs bring to the table, the entrepreneurs need to, again, understand agility, creativity, the opportunity to innovate, rapidly make changes, solve a problem, be very in tune to the solution they develop. I mean, it can be a great marriage, and that's what really entrepreneurs, they should learn how to test ideas, little bets, faster, learn from their mistakes, and implement the changes before they run out of money.
And you talk about running out of money and what you just described. I compare certain parts of entrepreneurship and business ownership to the game Battleship. And what's the hardest one to sink? It's that little 2-slot boat that you're always trying to find, because it can be wherever. And you talk about the inability of large companies to make fast decisions. Well, an understanding of that kind of strategy can have a lot to do with your success or failure, because you understand what you might have the ability to do, where the other guy might have the ability to crush something. You have the ability to get out of the way real fast. Mm-hmm. So let's turn that into the discussion of capital. And everybody's got a startup and nobody's got any money for them. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but everyone's looking for it. What are a few of the things that, because we know the big companies and the big entities and the big ventures have capital, or at least access to it, maybe a little easier than we do. What are a few of the things that a startup or entrepreneur should be focused on when it comes to raising capital?
They should know some of the unwritten rules, and they should know if they're ready. And I'll give you some examples. First of all, why you're raising capital. What's the use? Mm-hmm. If you don't have any skin in the game, early stage, most people aren't going to be the ones who are going to take the skin in the game for you. Assuming that you do have skin in the game and you've got something, what is the use and what's the product that you're selling? What's the value of your company? There's a mathematical drill I can get into with a lot of companies, but the typical company is going to raise 3 or 4 times or more, depending on the type of trajectory that they're going to be on, the type of company that they're at. If you lose control of that company in the first 2 rounds, you're probably sunk statistically. What does that mean? Well, if you don't know what operational control means, if you don't understand the dilution of the cap tables and what your current valuation is and what your next round of valuation is, if you don't have a strategy to be able to improve that valuation, you're going to probably have a hard time. Also understanding that you've got to communicate in a way to the investors that makes sense. Sometimes people are way too close to it. I almost look at the average pitch deck, which, by the way, pitch deck and a marketing and a sales deck are very different things. But a pitch deck needs to be able to articulate not only what the company does, but also think about the mentality of a series of checks boxes. In absence of having a box checked, I don't have enough information to make the right decision. And in absence of having that box checked properly, you may have created a red flag. If you put a slide up there that says, we have no market competition, you may think that's brilliant. To the right investor, that could be the wrong thing to say.
It might tell me that there might not be a market for it.
Exactly.
Right.
Or converse, we have tons of competition, but we're different. Product differentiation, it's pricing, it's distribution, it's, whatever it may be. But be able to understand who your investor is, to communicate effectively in the raise, know what you're raising, know what you're worth, have a defensible deck, and really have a strategy to capital raise. I mean, again, it's not rocket science, but there is a pattern, there's a process, and if you haven't been through it, there's no substitute for experience. I mean, it's interesting. And even teaching folks on how to pitch. Look, it's not a sales job. Your job is to engage and inform. I'm even going to stop short of saying persuade. But your information, if clearly articulated, should be persuasive enough to the right investor. But you've also got to be able to defend your value too, because again, it's a business transaction. Taking on an investor is not a favor, it's not a hobby, and you should respect the people's capital accordingly. But you should also respect your capital and your time. And by the way, equity, it's not like handing out candy at a trade show. You should protect that cap table, but you should recognize the value of all the things that you're doing. Sometimes people think free advice is the best value. I'll tell you, be very careful of free advice.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because Think Big acts as advisors and partners in some ways to a lot of different businesses, and that knowing where to hit it with the hammer is a very important part of building or repairing or fixing certain things. You and Think Big do, in fact, work with lots of local and regional small businesses that are startups. Am I correct?
We do.
Okay. Is that largely in the capacity as advisors? I know you guys have a fund and you were involved with iVerify. Is that?
Right. We were the lead investor on the first round. We participated in the second round, and Toby's a great success story. Frankly, for Kansas City. All the different entities that were involved. But I remember his presentation. Nobody had really invested in size yet, and early stage company, invest in the person, not the idea. And the idea stood up to our litmus test, but I think we gave him an investment decision in 90 minutes.
So with that and the raising of capital, you look at a number of different factors. How much does the entrepreneur, or the founder, or the people, or the team involved have an influence on the decision that you make?
Tremendous. It depends on the round and the life cycle of the company. I mean, early stage, Matt, your persistence, your professionalism, your grit, determination, and the command of your knowledge, within a subject, your expertise, it shines through. And you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you should know what you're doing and why. But early stage companies are hard. To be able to create a series of points and assume that it's going to be, a trajectory and it's only upward, it's not. The chart usually looks like this at times. Yeah. But it's not that adversity is going to sink a company. What do you do for the entrepreneur when they're faced with adversity? And so the early stage decisions that I think an investor has to face, that we face, and we're no longer making investments in the same way. We still invest our time and talent. You've got to look at the determination, the X factors. Frankly, even kindness and being a human being is not overrated in my book. But the ability to not make excuses. You and I've been around the block long enough. There's no nobility at 1 o'clock in the morning. When you're on a fresh pot of coffee, trying to figure out how to make something work. You may be sleeping in a car. You may be in a 7 a.m. Meeting, but was preceded by a 4 a.m. wake up time with a 5 a.m. flight. It doesn't feel very sexy and glamorous. But the resilience, the perseverance, the sheer determination. It's not just passion. You've got to be pragmatic about the application of your skills and really just keep grinding away. And you know what? If I can't look at somebody and believe that an early stage company that they're going to do that, either their valuation they're not going to like, or we're not going to invest our time or money at all. And early stage entrepreneurs are almost always about the jockey and not only the horse.
Yeah, I think that you can have a great jockey that's riding a mule,
Yeah.
and they're not going to win the Kentucky Derby. I think that that's pretty true, but
But they might win something else. They
Yeah.
just need a different race to be in. Or
well, they need to have the right vehicle in
Yeah.
that correct race. So, with that, there's a number of traits and qualities that Herb just listed off that you often see with successful entrepreneurs. Do you think that you can create those things, or do you think that they just happen? For me personally, I was born a specific way, and I have a personality, and I'm an ADD guy. And I think we might have had this conversation at some point, but for a long time in my life, that was a drawback. And then I figured it out. I figured out how to narrow it and put it in a bottle so the times when I needed to get it out.
Sure.
It's almost like this jug of moonshine or something that was off to the side.
We're supposed to talk about that.
Well, it is what it is. So, you pull it out and I'm able to, tap into it. And sometimes it just happens, but sometimes I'm able to control it. So do you think that now at the same time, specific organization and that kind of, attention to detail aren't always my strong suits. So how, do you think that those things can be created, or do they just happen?
I think they absolutely can be created. Teams win. Sole founders only can get so far for so long. Statistically, there's, if you were to isolate the world in a business co-founder and a technical co-founder, those people raise capital better, faster, larger amounts, and their business goes further. It doesn't mean that they still don't go out of business, but it's because it's a yin and yang. People are covering each other's blind spots. But I think if you are the original founder of a company, or you're really an inventor, and then you want to become the founder, look, founder means also leader or manager. If you're not a good leader or manager, there's no shame in being a brilliant inventor. So you've got to be able to recognize the help that you need upon the life stage of the company that you're entering into. And I think you can build teams, but I think you also have to respect the role that you play inside of that team. You got to respect the other team members. So I think you can improve your batting average significantly by finding the right people around you in the right conditions. And again, it's dynamic. As things progress, the needs of a company does change. But yes, I absolutely think you can create it. It could be with advisors, early stage, team members, later stage, or even smart investors, or a combination of all three.
So you just brought up a batting average analogy there, and I think it's very fair to compare. If you have runners on base, the guy hitting has a better chance of getting a hit because the first baseman's holding the guy on first, or there's different things and different scenarios in play. So you think it's pretty crucial to find people that are good at the things you aren't good at?
Yes. Or at least better than you. And
should you be finding those? And when I say at all cost, I'm being extreme.
Right.
But in my book $1 Million Bedroom, I mentioned Jim Olafson, who was the founder of General Homes, which I didn't throw this in the book because they don't have a true claim on this, but they were one of the first 3 companies that did the model home. And that's why that company got so big. But he tells you straight out in there, he says, I always hired people that were smarter than me. Now, I've known him my whole life, and he said that to me my whole life. Like when I wanted to open a lemonade stand, he literally said, you should find someone that's better at making lemonade than you. So do you find that to be true? And like at what cost and what limits do you stop when it comes to finding the people that fill the gaps that you can't?
Well, obviously you've got capital constraints. If you can't afford it, and you can't find a way to work through a relationship that makes sense to both parties, and you've got that as a constraint. Removing that, smarter maybe, better for sure, and better often means smarter, but smarter doesn't always mean intelligence. I'm not dismissing anyone, but everyone's got different IQ and EQ and different other cues that are very valuable. If I'm looking for a graphic designer, is it best to be able to hire somebody who's the best at print when we're primarily a web-based firm? Visual designer is going to have very different skills than a graphic designer for print. But the ability to take people that are good, reliable, ideally nice people that you want to work with, but are really good at their job, and again, the difference between somebody with a unique ability in their job, and what that means is that they're doing something they're meant to do, and they're constantly learning and getting better. Versus somebody who's just like, look, I'm going to point of stasis. I'm really good, but I'm never going to grow beyond that. If I can find those people, if you can build a team with those types of people, and again, it's based on the life cycle of the company. The needs are always changing. But if you can find the right combinations of people based on what the needs of the company are at that point in time and a little bit down the road, absolutely you should find those people. But again, recognize that it's always changing. And the last thing I'll tell, business owner or entrepreneur, occasionally your dream or the opportunity isn't always congruent with somebody else that's been a great, valuable, amazing team member. Their life has different goals. And I think you have to cheer for people if they one day leave a company that you've helped build together and they got to go do something else. There's nothing wrong with that. I've never really understood when people, hire your friends one day and you leave the next day and you're slamming them and talking behind their back. It doesn't make sense. I mean, not every relationship always works out, but you've got to cheer for people.
I actually, that's part of my recruiting process is, because you run into that, why do I want to work here? Well, you're going to be treated well. If we do well, you'll do even better. Mm-hmm. And I think you'll probably find yourself running into a lot better opportunities down the road if you choose to not leave it. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the vision that Think Big has as a company and as advisors, and also what do you like the most about what you do here?
Great question. The vision that we started with and where I think all this is going is not really different. It just takes on a different form, and I'll explain that. I grew up to two immigrant parents. I'm first generation. My father held a PhD from Northwestern, was a chemist, and while he was really, really good technically, we were dirt poor. Grew up drinking powdered milk, and growing up in St. Louis in the 70s. Maybe not dirt poor, but we didn't have a whole lot of extra stuff, I'll put it that way. But you face discrimination. I'm half Chinese, and sometimes you forget the discrimination that you face and all these things. But really what's interesting is that for him being so technically proficient, he wasn't successful as a business owner. You're never going to be an entrepreneur. Ultimately, you need to turn that into a business owner that's operating. You got to be successful to create jobs and a recurring revenue. So one of the biggest frustrations and challenges that I think we have where all this is going is how do we create better outcomes for entrepreneurs? How do we make them business owners? One of the things that we've seen with this American dream, which American dream again is usually coupled with a lot of hard work and late hours and everything else, is what is the recipe? Here's one thing that we have seen absolutely matter over the last handful of years. If you can take an entrepreneur with the creativity, agility, and the determination, and I don't care if you're old, young, of color, religious background, it really doesn't matter. If you're a good person doing good things and working hard, that counts for a lot to begin with. But the interesting thing is you create these marriages between entrepreneurs and even large companies. These large companies really need R&D, and they need new ventures to commercialize. You put those two together in this partnership model, I don't care if it's a pilot or prototyping or you create these models, entrepreneurs can find capital, they can find access to markets, they can pilot new technologies to find those little bets and find out which ones work. The large companies, they can find talent, they can find insight, and they can find an ability to acquire or invest in a company that ultimately may get acquired by that company. What's really exciting is that if those two are done right, cities benefit. You create clusters of knowledge, you create jobs, you create almost this mentality, it's this flywheel effect, and that's why I think even workspaces are so important. The more that we're digitally connected, the more I think we're really isolated. We're not building the trusted relationships face to face that we really need to do business. And so where all this is going, if we can help more entrepreneurs that are building things and help more freelancers become that workforce for entrepreneurs while they're working side by side in their next gig, their next employer, their next aha moment, I think we can really create a lot of jobs and a lot of outcomes. And what would be really gratifying to me begins and ends with people. How do we help somebody who's willing to work hard, solving a problem, treating other people with respect? How do we help them create a benefit for their family and make an impact on their community? That to me is really exciting. And that to me, on the days that are really hard, being here, I love what I do, but I don't always like what I do every day. That's the difference that keeps us all, I think, big coming back in. We really believe in the mission. Call it hokey, call it the American dream, but when you see the difference you're making in people's lives, it really matters, and that's exciting to me.
So if I want to get involved with Think Big or visit your co-working spaces, how do I do that?
Well, it's a pretty onerous contract. If you just walk into the door and you probably even tell us we don't have a, 2 nickels room together, we'll probably give you a place to sit for the day or a couple days if you're really nice for free. But really, starting is the hardest thing for many entrepreneurs. There are a lot of people that are saying woulda, shoulda, coulda, and either the kids start crying or a good TV show's on or there's some event they want to go to. You got to start. You can't build anything unless you start. But if you can start by either coming in for a program, we have a lot of events. Often they're free. We do a lot of community impact stuff through the foundation side. But starting, and if you just want to sit next to your next potential mentor, your peer-to-peer advisory that goes on every day, just come on down. But we do everything from the co-working, we do innovation partnering for large companies. We're involved in building and designing workspaces. But really it's just about coming down here. And if you just really show up and say, I don't know why I'm here, but this is what I'm trying to do, that's a great start. It's not enough to know what people do. But if you tell me what you're doing right now and what you need, man, that's where the conversation begins that matters. And so I'd say, get involved in your own destiny, come down, tell somebody else about what you're trying to do. They'll probably force you to do what you've been putting off anyway, but then that's how it all starts.
And to further define, here is 1712 Main Street.
It is.
And do you guys have plans of other or future locations?
Well, we have been involved in helping other locations through feasibility studies, either building owners, real estate developers, or even cities. We've helped design another space on the East Coast. It's probably about 30,000 feet. We do have plans. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will build and design them. It might. But we also partner. We partner with a lot of spaces. What we really bring, I think, to the table of other spaces is we can act as an innovation partner, creating an innovation center, reinventing local businesses while also attracting things, especially in the smart city space. But we would love to grow and build and expand because I think the real opportunity is how do we create a better dial tone of entrepreneurship? It's that network effect. How do we make it easier, remove friction, and frankly, for guys like you that have built multiple ventures successfully, how do you go a little bit easier, a little bit better, maybe a little bit faster? That's the key. There's got to be a better way, and I think the better way is not so graceful that you remove the human interaction. It still begins with people, but I think people can work more efficiently. So yeah.
In order to work better with people, you have to actually be around people.
You do. Yeah, you have to work.
You have to be having accidental networking,
collisions
right, with other entrepreneurs. I think that's so true. When I've had at least 12 good ideas during this conversation, and I remember 6 of them. So, but the point is that stimulation and that talking about what you're doing, and it can't just be talk, like you said. It's got to be action. I tell people that just by starting, you're now ahead of 80% of everyone else, and it might even be a higher number. I'm being conservative there. So, all right, I actually want to close this conversation with something that I've been examining, and it could be the topic of a future book. I don't know, but what is the difference between being a genius and being crazy?
Wow. Hard question to address.
It sometimes depends who you ask about the same subject. But.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that joke. If on every, mass transit called a plane or a bus or train, there's a crazy person in everyone. If you look around and everyone's normal, it's like, oh, this is the one that isn't crazy. Well,
you're the crazy one.
Yeah.
So that's like if you can't spot the sucker, then it's probably you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we got all these metaphors.
Right.
If it's free, then you're the
another book of metaphors coming. You never know.
Yeah. I think the difference. It's a fine line, in business. If you are so misunderstood, and there's no application for what you're doing, you may be a genius, but it's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything.
I wouldn't define that as a genius. I think a genius is on many levels. You don't have to be the smartest. Like, you don't have to be solving crazy advanced algorithms that no one else can see. I'm not necessarily like Russell Crowe and A Beautiful Mind and breaking code. It's almost, and that's why I'm trying to determine that difference. Is a genius just someone that finds that way to get it done that no one else has the ability or vision to see?
Yeah, I think it's like the difference between invention and innovation. Invention in a vacuum is a great idea, but you don't have a market home.
Mm-hmm.
Innovation is, hey, there's a market home to find. You just found a breakthrough to be able to solve it. I think crazy. What does crazy mean? Does it mean that you are trying something that is formally unattainable? It's like the 4-minute mile. The first time somebody said, I'm going to break the 4-minute mile, never happened, and then he broke it, and then within a year, multiple people broke through the 4-minute mile. You have to redefine the boundaries and expectations. If somebody thinks they can or can't, they're kind of right. But the crazy needs to be just crazy enough to be able to try something, but it needs to be coupled with enough pragmatic, I'm not even going to say discipline, but an application to be able to find out does it work. But I think crazy is not necessarily a bad thing, but but I think crazy, unbridled, untethered, ungrounded, I'd run from it.
Genius or irresponsible.
Yeah, but genius and crazy, man, I don't even know the answer. I haven't had enough cups of coffee this morning to be able to figure that one out.
I mean, I'm still working on it. It's been a very interesting. I've watched over the last month. I've been drawn to these different documentaries and movies that are about crazy people, or maybe they're genius. I don't know, and it's just been really kind of bringing up that question. And some of that is because at every point of any of the businesses that I've done that have been successful, I had someone tell me, well, you're crazy. And not in a good way, not like, like you're crazy. With the $1 million bedroom story, I quit a 6-figure a year job to go do that. And my dad told me I was crazy. Mm-hmm. I said, I don't think I'm crazy. I actually think that this is going to happen, and I see other people doing it, and I know that I have qualities that they don't, plus the ones that they have. So I think some of that's been the determination of who defines crazy, who defines genius. My wife told me today that that's what brought that up. She said, well, you're a genius. I said, no, I think I'm just crazy. So it depends on what day and who's judging it too.
Well, I think the dangerous true crazy doesn't know they're crazy.
Yeah.
And if you kind of know you're kind of crazy, it's kind of like, if you know you're smart, but you know you're not the smartest person. Mm-hmm. I think it's that healthy boundary of, by the way, is it clinically crazy or diagnosed crazy? Mm-hmm. But I think, crazy enough to start, but not crazy enough also to listen to people saying that can't be done. I think more good ideas have been killed by, some well-meaning person saying that can't be done or you shouldn't do it.
Right.
And you listen to it. But again, there's a limit to that too.
Well, you heard it straight from the two craziest people on this interview today. Stick around. I'm going to take you guys on a little walk through Think Big's co-working space. And Herb, thank you. Appreciate all the insight. It's really been something else.
Thanks for your book. I read it on a trip not too long ago, and you know what? I love the fact that you call it like you see it, and it's real. Let's be real. But,
that's the whole purpose of this series. And so you guys know, we're actually using several copies of my book right now just to hold the camera up a little higher. So
pretty glamorous stuff.
It has, and I'll include a picture of that shortly. But so $1 million bedroom continues to find uses outside of casual reading and decent information. So yeah, thanks. See you guys next time.
If you're trying to do business in China and you're trying to get connected to somebody, in about 3 seconds, this camera's going to zoom in on me. It's going to fill the entire frame. And if I keep talking, I talk. Hello, come on in. Let's maximize the view. So all of a sudden, it's going to pop open the view and it's going to be filled on screen. There's no latency. The ability to be able to connect with somebody overseas. This is video conferencing on steroids. If I sat there, you talk there, it actually will switch and move the camera. But the ability to have a meeting. So when we did our Cisco Live announcement, we announced the Smart City project in front of 43,000 people in 2015. It was in San Diego, live on stage. So we had Mayor James right here. We had a senior executive with Sprint right here. We brought them in on telecast, and we obviously beamed them into San Diego. But the ability to be able to see face-to-face who you're working with, do business. If you can't get on a plane or if you can't meet face-to-face is the next best thing. And so obviously Google Hangouts, people are familiar with that, but the ability to use these telepresence equipment, this is an expensive unit, $70,000.
Wow.
But the ability to be able to have life size, that feel, it really can create a trusted relationship a lot faster. And we have 4 of these units throughout the space.
I don't think the camera's even going to show this. That is an amazing picture. And the camera just Did it just recognize that I was talking?
Yeah, if you keep talking, it'll zoom in on you.
Wow.
Keep talking.
Oh, check, and wow. So one camera over here has moved to go show Herb, and now the cameras are recognizing that I am talking. So that's pretty wild.
So it has enough intelligence embedded. It's almost like a TV production studio. So now it's going to go pan to this, and if I keep talking, it's going to go zoom in on me in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Now we can even go dual screen. What's interesting is I can put a script. I can put an entire venue of people. I can look like I'm sitting across a table in a meeting, and people have these units also. You can do single screen, double screen. There's some that have 4 screens all across. You can be contiguous, or you can be single panel. So anyway, so up here you've got large companies that are 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 people and growing in the spaces. This is also a lucky floor. This was the space that iVerify had. Obviously they got acquired for $100 million plus, so maybe there's some good mojo on this floor.
Is it available?
The space?
Yeah.
There's always turnover.
Yeah.
Because our best scenario is when a company comes in here, grows from 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 to 20, and then moves out because of continued growth and expansion. And sometimes even the people who are sitting next to, they're selling. So a lot of the larger companies or middle-sized companies are starting to find working next to entrepreneurs. The spirit rubs off, the creativity, the agility, the energy, but also it's really good because the employees like that fresher environment. It feels good. It feels much more alive and really encourages a much freer thought process. Sometimes even working inside of a large company, trying to be innovative, somebody walks by and says, "Oh yeah, we did that 10 years ago, it failed." All of a sudden all the mojo's gone. So sometimes even exporting a business unit from a large company, putting them into a space like this can really change the likelihood of success. So you get private offices, singles, doubles, triples, quads, visual connectivity, acoustical privacy, obviously high-speed networked. Every floor has got an amenity that keeps people from running, keeps them running into each other based on these collisions. This one's a company kitchen, where fingerprint activated kiosk where you can buy your lunch or whatever it is. Here's Blake, presumably buying lunch or something.
How you doing?
Everyone loves turning around and finding that they're on camera.
But a lot of great companies. What's interesting is that probably a good percentage are what I call service providers. I mean, here's a venture fund, PE fund, Minted. You may have heard of Minted, really good technology company. And you've got startups next to freelancers. There's so much work that comes out of this place for writers, developers, freelancers, and they're just sitting like, here's Amazon, AWS has got an office here. This is a telematics software company. This is a marketing communications company. But if you're just sitting next to your next client, customer, partner, mentor, peer, founders who can commiserate together when things are hard, it's the power of the human relationship that really matters.